Hey everybody, it's Mike over at Taxes and Bricks. Welcome to episode 23. We are continuing our 4-part series on filing status. And I know Monday I said that I would do married filing jointly / married filing separately today, but I've changed my mind. And we are instead going to talk about head of household, because I think it's sort of a natural progression to go from single to head of household rather than single to married, at least in terms of my thought process. But of course, I'm warped, so there's that. So, head of household today. We'll pick up with the other statuses later. Taking a quick break because this is going to be tax related, so let's pay the lawyers, and we'll be right back.
This video is rated TAX and contains occasional ramblings, mild attempts at humor, self-deprecation, irreverence, brief numerical examples, and adult tax and accounting advice that may not be suitable for all taxpayers. Viewer discretion is advised. Before following any of the advice in this or any of our videos, you should always consult with a tax professional. Thank you.
All right, so basically here's what I'm going to do with today. I'm going to be reading a lot from this because, again, like Monday, I think the IRS kind of gets it right. I know, shocking. So I'm going to read a little bit from some notes here that I've written kind of directly cribbed from the IRS website and some of the tax resources that I use because I don't want there to be any confusion with this. And head of household does get kind of tricky. So I'm going to be reading. So I'm going to be looking down a little bit. I apologize for not making eye contact. My grandmother would be horrified. God rest her soul. But anyway, forgive me. So we're going to talk a little bit about the definition of head of household here, okay? And then we're going to run into the definition of a qualifying child. We're going to run into the definition of a qualifying relative. We're going to talk about what upkeep means for your home. And then we're also going to run through, exceptions to the rules, divorced parents. We're going to talk about exceptions to the time tests, all of that good stuff. So, hang in there. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but I'm going to get you through it. All right, so what does head of household mean? Okay. In order to be head of household, okay, you have to be unmarried. You have to have paid more than half of the cost of upkeep on your home, okay? So that means rent, mortgage, utilities, property taxes, insurance, groceries like food consumed on the premises of your home, repairs, maintenance, furniture, paint, carpet, dustpan, brush. You pay for more than half of that. And the home was the principal residence for more than half of the year for your qualifying child, or the entire year for a qualifying relative, okay? So what's a qualifying child, okay? Well, qualifying child has a number of criteria, okay? Under 19 years old on the last day of the year, under 24 on the last day of the year, and also a full-time student, or any age and permanently and totally disabled. So doesn't matter how old, 19, 24 doesn't apply. Permanently, totally disabled, they're good for qualifying child. If they are one of the following people: child, stepchild, eligible foster child, brother, sister, stepbrother, stepsister, or a descendant of any of them. So, a grandchild, your kid's kid. A niece or a nephew, your brother or sister's kid. Cousins don't count. Sorry, you just don't. Qualifying child must also be a United States citizen, a resident alien, a U.S. national, or a resident of Canada or Mexico. They can't be claimed on another person's return, and they can't file a joint tax return themselves. So, you can't have, your married daughter, claimed on your returns, and then she's also filing jointly with her husband. That doesn't work. No. Okay. What's a qualifying relative? Okay. Qualifying relative. Age doesn't matter. They got to be a child, stepchild, foster child, brother, sister, niece, nephew, parent, grandparent, grandchild, brother or sister of your parent, so an aunt or uncle, step relationship with any of the people, so like a step aunt or something. Anyway, whatever. Okay, they have to live with you all year. That's 365 days of the year, and we're going to talk about temporary absences in a second here. Okay, they can't have made more than $4,300 in gross income. That does not count Social Security. Social Security income doesn't count. Okay, and we'll get to that when you get to parents, because that's when we see it the most. So we're talking like somebody's got a job, they live with you, $15,000. It's like a nephew or something like that. You can't claim them as a qualifying relative. Okay, unless of course they qualify as a child, but we're gonna pretend they don't. All right, and they can't be a qualifying child of somebody else, even if that person doesn't take them as a qualifying child. So you can't like take your sister's kid. If your sister could claim that child, you can't just do that. Like, it doesn't qualify you for head of household. I mean, you might be able to take the dependency exemption if that individual qualifies for the dependency exemption, but that's a totally different conversation. We're not talking about dependency here. We're talking about qualifying for head of household. Okay. Boyfriends, girlfriends don't qualify for head of household. I don't care how long they live with you and how much money you give them. Okay? Sorry. No luck. Okay? Doesn't work like that. Unless, of course, your boyfriend or your girlfriend's also like your brother or sister or your aunt or uncle. And then in that case, I don't even want to go there. So we're just going to skip over that one for a second. Okay. I'm going to take a quick breather here. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about exceptions to the time test. We're going to talk about parents becoming your, qualifying individuals for head of household. We're going to talk about people who are married but then considered unmarried. Because remember, we started this off by saying head of household, you got to be unmarried. And then we're going to talk a little bit about divorced parents. So sit tight, hang on, be right back. So it wouldn't be a day in my life or in the life of the tax code when I didn't say something and then go, but there are exceptions to how long people can live with you. So we already said, more than half the year for a child and 365 days for a qualifying relative. But kids go off to college. They go into the military. They get sick and go to the hospital. Adults, grown-ups, get sick and go to the hospital, or whatever. People could be locked up in a juvenile facility. They could be going to a rehab clinic. They could go on business trips or vacations. There are a multitude of reasons why somebody could not actually physically live in your home, sleep every night for an entire year, or for more than half the year under your roof. So you're thinking to yourself, well, then what the hell does a time test do if you can have exceptions to it? Your home needs to be their principal residence, which means they need to potentially, when they come back, actually move back in with you. Or that's the intent. Like, they leave and they go on vacation for 7 or 8 months because it's a kid going on a gap year or something. And when they come back, they're going to come back to mommy and daddy's house. Or your aunt is living with you and she gets really sick and she has to go to some kind of a rehabilitation clinic or something for 8 or 9 months, but she comes back afterwards and lives with you again. That's a temporary absence, and that doesn't mean that you don't get to claim her and then use her as head of household for purposes of the tax law. So let's talk a little bit about parents. Parents don't actually need to live with you at all. So if they're your parents, as long as you are paying for more than half of their housing, like their rent, their mortgage, their property taxes, the upkeep on their home, their nursing home fees, their rest home fees, that's fine. They don't have to actually physically live in your home at all during the year, not even one night, as long as you're paying for where they live if they're your parents. That's the only exception to this. So if you have a cousin and you're paying for their apartment, that doesn't count. It's your parents. Why? Because people understand that parents get older and they may need to be in an assisted living facility or something like that, and maybe they were living with you. Maybe they weren't. Doesn't matter. You're paying for half. Parents are kind of a, non-starter with the tax code. Okay. So remember we started this thing and we said in order to be head of household, you got to be unmarried. But you don't have to be unmarried in every single case. You can actually be married and in one very particular instance be considered unmarried for head of household. When? Well, there's a series of criteria because they don't just, give with one hand, they're going to take with nine. Okay. You're married. You have a qualifying child. Relative, no. It's got to be a qualifying child, which we defined at the beginning, okay? That child has to live in your home for more than half the year. Your home that you maintain and keep up for more than 6 months. Or sorry, more than half of the upkeep. Sorry, I misspoke. You have to keep up more than half. Okay. And your soon to be ex spouse cannot have slept under the same roof with you, either in your home or anywhere in the world, at all during the last 6 months of the year. So, January, February rolls around, you and your spouse are like, dude, we're done. I'm out. You move out, you go get an apartment, you take the kid with you, qualifying child, okay? Kid lives with you almost the entirety of the year, definitely more than half the year, okay? And you pay for all of the apartment, and your ex-spouse doesn't even come over for a visit, doesn't live in that house, doesn't sleep in that house one blessed day during the last 6 months of the year. Even though you're married, so long as you are going to file a separate tax return from your spouse, you may claim head of household. Great. Okay. We're going to talk about two things that are not super great in terms of the positivity of them. So I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk about two sort of less pleasant situations with head of household, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. All right. So let's take a second and talk about two things that are not super pleasant. One would be the death of a child. Okay. And the other would be divorce. Okay. You have a child. Child is alive the beginning part of 2021, let's say. And then tragically your child passes away, say in March. I mean, if you're looking at the letter of the law here, the child didn't live with you for 6 months or more than half the year. That's okay. As long as the child was alive for one day during the course of the year, 1 minute of one day during the course of the year, and you provided more than half of the child's support during the time that child was alive, you may claim head of household and also claim the child as a dependent. Okay. Moving on. Divorced parents. Okay. It happens. Not a lot. It happens. Divorced parents usually have some kind of a custody arrangement. So what we're not talking about when we talk about head of household is we're not talking about 50-50 custody. Because remember we said a child, in order to be qualified for you to claim head of household, needs to have lived with you for more than half of the year. If you and your ex-spouse have 50-50 custody, and therefore the child, either by law or in reality, lives 50% of the year with the husband and 50% of the year with the ex-wife, okay, ex-husband, ex-wife, neither had the child for more than half of the year. Therefore, mathematically, neither may be head of household. I don't care what formula you come up with, unless you can say, yes, we have 50-50 custody, but however, in reality, I counted the number of days and my ex-husband counted the number of days, and we agree that even though the arrangement says 50-50, little Timmy lived with me for 8 months and lived with, Joe for 4 months. Okay. Now, divorced parents. Let's say, though, you have a custodial parent. We'll call her Mary. Mary and Steve, the non-custodial parent. They're divorced. Neither of them are remarried. They have a child who's 14 years old. Mary and Steve don't live together. Again, they're divorced. Neither of them are remarried. And they both pay 100% of their respective homes. Okay, so they're going to qualify under the upkeep standard, and they've got a child, and the child's under 19. Great. Okay, we're there. If Mary is the custodial parent, and Mary has this 14-year-old child living in her home for 8 months out of the year, according to their agreement, and Steve has the child for 4 months out of the year, whether Mary claims the child as a dependent or Steve claims the child as a dependent, because the divorce decree says that they swap off year by year, Steve may never be head of household so long as that 14-year-old child does not spend more than half the year with him, whether that child is a dependent on his return or not. And by the way, Mary may be head of household every year that the child is with her more than half the year. Okay? so long as she upkeeps her home and whatever it is. Even if she says to Steve every other year, you can claim the 14-year-old child. So you don't have to have a dependent on your return when it's a divorced couple to be head of household. And you can't be head of household when you claim the child on your return as a result of your divorce agreement if that child does not live with you for more than half the year. Okay. There you have it. Probably one of the most confusing and convoluted filing statuses out there. But I hope this shed a little bit of light on things. I hope you found it interesting too. Thanks for watching episode 23, Filing Status Part 2, Head of Household. We'll come back, I think, next Monday with the next part in the series, which I think part 3. We'll probably do married and married filing separate. And depending on the time, I might even just be able to squeeze in qualifying widow or widower. And maybe we just make it a part 3 series, part 3 of 4, but we only do 3 parts. And then the following Wednesday, I don't know, we just take off. No, I'm just kidding. Whatever. Anyway, thanks for watching episode 23. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share our content with your friends. We've got, again, I think more than 50 subscribers, so this is great. And thank you for watching. And stay tuned tomorrow, Thursday, Lego Day. So we'll have some cool, exciting stuff to show you. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.